Hang on, it's still the 4th, right? Yeah, still the 4th. USA! 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 USA!
Musical styles are still a very important form of communication for our young people. Hi, I'm Joe Feinstein.
Before we get into the episode proper, there is something I want to acknowledge that I'm sure some of you are already aware of. This film is pretty bad when it comes to historical inaccuracies. However, rather than spending any length of time trying to get into that, I'm simply just going to point you right here for History Buff's episode on that. History Buffs is an incredible channel, and he does way more in-depth conversations as far as what this film got right and what was complete rubbish. Highly recommend it. Go check him out. The link will be in the description. Rather than talk about the historical inaccuracies, I'd like to do what I did for the Independence Day episode, which is just focusing on some of the characters and other easily overlooked things. And yes, the cast is incredible, we already know. Mel Gibson, Heath Ledger, Jason Isaacs, Jolie Richardson, Chris Cooper, and Tom Wilkinson, just to name a few. Now, obviously, we get much more of a range of perspectives from the American side, but we do also get some viewpoints from those siding with the British, and I appreciate that. Benjamin Martin is a military veteran who wants nothing more than to work on his farm in peace with his family and to figure out how to build a goddamn rocking chair that won't break.
Now comes the part where we throw our heads back and laugh. Ready?
Ready!
He and his family are swept up in the growing war, first by having to attend a vote to decide if their state will join in the fight, then when the British come to his home and destroy it, not to mention losing 2 sons in the war he wanted nothing to do with. Since he's the main character, we get most time with him, both in his happy moments with Charlotte and his daughter, as well as the sad moments with grieving the death of his sons and admitting to the terrible things he's done in the past. We get a slightly different perspective with his oldest son, Gabriel, but nothing really past his altruistic hope for a better future where men are actually considered equal. But honestly, I'm not so much wanting to speak about him as I am with another altruistic character, which is Occam. Occam basically gets sold into Martin's service, yet is treated with nothing but respect from Martin and most of the others. When they first meet, Martin goes out of his way to make sure that it's something Occam is okay with doing in the first place. He fights and serves with no complaint, and when he finds out that slaves who fight for the US will be granted freedom if they win, it builds even more hope and resolve in him. He saves the life of a man who looked down on him at every single turn, and it culminates in him staying in the fight longer than is required, simply because he believes in that cause.
It's more than 12 months. You're a free man.
I'm here now on my own accord.
Even with the little time we get with Jean, it gives us a lot of insight as to who he is and why he fights. About halfway through the film, we learned about how he lost his family.
A full quarter will be given to British wounded and any who surrender.
The British men of war gave no such quarter when it fired on a ship carrying my wife and daughters. I watched from 200 yards off as they were burnt alive.
And he makes mention more than once about his desire to kill the British, regardless of whether or not they've surrendered. But in the end, he softens a bit, and he decides to still march with the militia to make sure they have the best opportunity to win. And it's nice to see him and Martin find common ground and become friends. Both of those men have lost a lot, and they can finally start to rebuild their lives. As I mentioned prior, we also get a few viewpoints from the British side, which helps give us a much larger story context and helps give us a much meatier narrative. Now, the biggest of the 3 examples would be Tavington. He's shown to be an impatient and overly emotional officer who has only gotten this far due to his success on the battlefield. He will go to any length to find victory, even going so far as to directly disobey orders and break the rules of etiquettes of war at the time.
Fire the house and bombs. Stupid boy.
Ready to fire the town on your order, sir?
The town? Burn the church.
We also get a brief view from Cornwallis. He starts out apparently, gentlemanly and gracious in victory.
These brutal tactics must stop. These colonials are our brethren, and when this conflict is over, we will re-establish commerce with them.
But once he realizes how much of a threat Martin is and how many casualties are being inflicted, he quickly loses his temper and larger sense of honor, letting Tavington manipulate him into being allowed to commit war crimes. By the end, he's so ashamed of his defeat and his choices that he doesn't even surrender in person. He has his second-in-command go out and surrender. The last perspective we get is from one of Martin's neighbors, Wilkins. Wilkins very much supports being under the rule of Britain and calls the others traitors for thinking about independence. He gives up information on Martin and his family, which fully puts their lives in jeopardy. But even he sees how wrong Tavington is for his methods. But by the time he realizes it, it's far too late. The war is in full swing, and he chose a side. Not only did he choose a side, he chose the worst team to play for on that side. As much of a fan of historically accurate films as I am, this film is a perfect example of how writing and performances can elevate a project past all of the shortcomings and mistakes. Every actor put their all into the role, and it really helps sell the main idea. It's not just about freedom, it's about the fight and about learning what you're going to do with that freedom. Speaking of accuracy, there is a thought I'd like to end this episode on. And I know up top I said I wouldn't really get into it, but I might as well since we're here. There's often a conversation about historical accuracy versus historical authenticity. And for those who haven't heard of this before, it basically boils down to this. Historical accuracy speaks to the hard facts surrounding people and events. Historical authenticity speaks to the overall level of detail and immersion of the setting in question. So while this film does a wonderful job of helping us feel immersed with the set design, costumes, and battle tactics, it stumbles in a number of areas in terms of accuracy for characters and events. But again, I highly recommend you go check out History Buffs for the specifics. My overall point is this. I think it's okay if a film focuses on authenticity over accuracy, just so long as the script is good enough to hold everything else together. It's why this film did so well and films like The Village fall flat. A huge thanks to all you who checked the episode out. I wish you a happy 4th and hope that I'll see you for the next episode.
Stop the presses!
Oh, we're on to my favorite part of the video. Ladies, gentlemen, and the Technicolor rainbow in between, we come once again to 6 Degrees of Muppets, aka, let's call this Uncle Sam's spicy summertime secession, or whatever. Okay, let's get started. This film starred Mel Gibson, who was also in We Were Soldiers with Kerry Russell, who was in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes with Andy Serkis, who was in Andor with Stellan Skarsgård, who was in Thor with Chris Hemsworth, who was in Thor Ragnarok with Tom Hiddleston, who was in the 2014 Muppets Most Wanted. I once again prove I'm the best around. As always, thank you so much for watching. If you got any sort of suggestions as to what I should cover next, let me know in the comments, and I hope to see you next time.
Musical styles are still a very important form of communication for our young people. Hi, I'm Joe Feinstein.